Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So here we are. We're learning Ashlag Kaballah, and we're going through this book called The Inner Work, which is a compilation of excerpts from the introductory articles of the Bal Ha Sulam. I thought today I would like to start off because the world is in such a crazy place, and there's so much collapse of the old systems and so much confusion in the world today, that I would just like to state as emphatically as possible what we're doing here. And so the Bal Ha Sulam, who is one of the greatest, if not the greatest Kabbalist of the modern era, explains that there is no problem in the world outside of the problem that we are discussing. I want to be clear about what I'm saying here. He says that there's absolutely no problem outside of the problem that we are discussing, the problem of the ego, that everything else will come into balance when we fix this, and that there's no other solution. I mean, this is such a brave statement for somebody. This is somebody who wrote volumes and volumes and wrote the commentary. He decoded a secret book. So this is not a lightweight person. This is somebody who is the greatest of the greatest scholars, who was able to decode the writings of the Ari HaKodesh, the Kabbalists. This is from secret writings that were written in encoded language, and he was able to decode it. And he says that there's no solution. In other words, there's no political solution, there's no economic solution, there's no cultural solution, there's no scientific, there's no economic solution to the problems that the world is going through, other than this problem, which is the ego. And then he goes on to say that the Torah has in it this encoded information that for many, many generations people had to move. They were evolving. Their consciousness was evolving. The Jewish people and the entire world was evolving, and therefore the people couldn't understand what was being said to them. So that is why we learned last week that the Bal Ha Sulam says that the Zohar was written, the secret book from 2,000 years ago, was written for our generation, that the world would evolve to a place where people were ready. Not only were they ready to take this step of higher consciousness, but they have a necessity to. So if you went back 700 years, and they would, you can get on a boat and you can go with a bunch of soldiers to a place where you have like free land. You could just show up somewhere and you see people who are like running around with spears, and you could just take over the whole place and you can set up shop again. And so it was very hard to explain to people that there would come a time that we would be so on top of each other, and that our egos would be so big, and that we'd have so much desire for, everybody wants a Mercedes, everybody wants a big fancy house, everybody wants to be popular, everybody wants to be famous. So to try to explain this to people thousands of years ago, or even 500 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do it. So what we're learning here is Kabbalah, which is the Torah. It's the inner aspect of Torah. It is explained. This is just the I don't know how to say it. This is just the instructions, the stripped down instructions for what all the stories and all the midrashim and all the things that we're learning, the allegories in the Torah, is this wisdom, this scientific wisdom that we're learning here, is that how do we overcome our egos? How do we come together and unify above our differences? And how do we bring the balance that you see in nature, how do we bring that to humanity? That's the entire wisdom. That's what we're studying here, okay? Divine names and spheros all describe levels of experiencing God and what to do in order to merit these levels in divine experience. Divine names and sephirot, which are the worlds, the sephirot is the Hebrew word for these worlds of consciousness that we're describing, all describe levels of experiencing God and what to do in order to merit these levels of divine experience, okay? So there's many styles of teaching for Kabbalah, and there's different books out there. And so if you're in a Kabbalah class and they don't get to this point and explain that when we're talking about the spheros, they have all these charts with all these different bubbles in there, and there's one on the right, there's one on the left, and it looks like a person, and the tree of life. And if they don't get down to make the point, if the Kabbalah teacher doesn't make the point that these are levels of experiencing God, levels of unity, levels of love, levels of consciousness, if we don't say that up front, if the teacher doesn't explain that, then what are you learning? We're learning something that's very abstract and just these kind of random words and names, and it's like counting the angels on the head of a pin. That's not what we're doing here. We're talking about things that happen inside of us, that levels of feeling, levels of perception, levels of desire that are inside of us. And these are what the spheros are. And the reason why we're saying is that these are names of experiencing God, is that the way that we experience God is through these higher levels of consciousness where we can see that things are connected in a way that is very balanced. So as you have higher and higher consciousness, you can see, you can perceive, you can feel, you can understand that everything that's happening is all part of one unified system that's taking us to a certain place. And the place that we're being taken to is the place of joy and happiness, unity, love, and everybody being, together and everything working out in a good way. That's what we're talking about, okay? The light of Mashiach, of the Messiah, is only experienced when we desire to give. Those who are not working to reach the state of giving are not waiting for Mashiach. They're not waiting for the Messiah, but rather for something they imagine to be the Messiah. The truth is that the Messiah will come only to instill in us the value of giving. So a lot of people don't like this because they're used to learning Torah, and they're used to having all of these different subjects, and you're talking about all these different rituals, and you're talking about the holidays, and you're talking about farming, and you're talking about contracts. And here, the Bal Ha Sulam is saying that the whole entire point of the Torah is to evolve us to a place where we are givers, and that when we enter into that altruistic space, and we truly, the same way you would act with your child or you act with your wife, is the way that we're going to all act, all of humanity is going to act towards each other, and in that place, everything is going to come into balance, and everything is going to be great, and that all of our problems are that we are takers and selfish instead of being givers. And so the study of Kabbalah, we go through the entire history, the evolution of creation, and explain why God created us as takers, and why he wanted us to have that. We've said this many times, and I'll just say very quickly, it's because in order for us to have a sense of free will, to have our own identity, and to be able to actually do the work and actually end up in a place where we feel that we've earned what we have. And so because of those three reasons, that is why God created us in this way. That's why we have this evolution that has to happen, where we started off very connected to God in a very high place, in the spiritual realms, and then we came down to this lower physical place where we feel our independence, we feel our free will, and we feel that we're disconnected from everybody else. That is all done on purpose so that we can rebuild and return with with these three new attributes: free will, a sense of self, and a feeling that we earned what we're getting. Okay, those are the reasons why we are in the reality that we are in now. Okay, moving on. Angels do not exist in heaven like they are depicted in many paintings. Angels represent spiritual states of consciousness within ourselves. Angels do not exist in heaven like they are depicted in many paintings. Angels represent spiritual states of consciousness within ourselves. Okay? So many very important things being said here. First of all, we have this, because we sense ourselves and we don't sense the unity between us, the collective, the truth that we're all connected, because we don't sense that readily, we tend to project all of the things that are happening inside of us, and we project them outside of us. And so this is one of the very big problems with religion. And anytime I say something bad about religion, believe me, we have twice as many problems in the secular society. But one of the problems that we have in religion is that we are looking back at people who came before us, and they felt this disconnection, and they described things to us, and now we're hearing things. So we have thousands of years of paintings of people depicting angels. And so if somebody says the word angel to you, you think maybe a body with wings, right? And so these are some of the hurdles that we have to get over And that's why it's so important that we learn only from true masters and from tzaddikim, from holy people, from righteous people who've attained these levels of consciousness, and they can speak to us in a way that helps us, draws us out of our lower consciousness. And so here, the Bal Ha Sulam, the greatest Kabbalist, is saying that that if you think angels exist in heaven, like it shows you in the paintings, then you're really just confused. And really what we're talking about are spiritual forces that exist inside of ourselves, okay? That's like a shift that has to happen for us. We have to shift from feeling everything as being external to us and realize that these things are being the source of all of these things are from inside of us, individually and collectively. Okay, let's move on. The Messiah will reveal the greatness of God so that we can be free from wanting to receive. How many people are yearning for this? The Mashiach will reveal the greatness of God so that we can be free from wanting to receive. How many people are yearning for this? Okay, so like all of these little snippets, they're very deep. You can read it like 50 times and start to like see what is how deep what is being said is. Okay, so it's the Mashiach is going to come, the Messiah is going to come and show us how great God is. And that is going to somehow make us not want to receive. Why? What are you talking about? Right? So if I met the woman of my dreams and I was totally just wanted to be with her, and that would awaken in me a desire to just want to give her everything that she possibly wants, as long as I can be have a relationship with her, right? That's the key, right? And so that's the problem with God, is that because God hid himself so that we could feel ourselves and have a sense of identity, right? If God didn't hide himself, then we would say, oh, God is love, God is unity, God is everything, God has given me every single thing that I want, always, and everything is amazing all the time. We would have a problem existing. And so we have to rebuild ourselves and this is the method of Kabbalah, is that how do you receive something without destroying the relationship? So we've gone through this before, but this is literally the study of Kabbalah. If you start to study the work of the Ari and the test, Talmud Esesphiros, you will go through a map of levels, and each level, the game is, how much can I receive inside of myself, the pleasure, without distancing myself from the giver of that pleasure. So if I gave you one drink, you would still be interested in having a conversation with me, and it would open up the conversation, and we'd be talking, and we'd be feeling, loose and free to have the conversation. If we went to 2 and we went to 3, all of a sudden your brain you'd have brain fog already, and then by 4 and 5 you'd be like uninterested, and you'd just be interested in sleeping, and you'd be interested in whatever else, but not in the conversation anymore. So that what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, how much can God is only giving good all the time. The problem is that if he gives us too much too quickly, we lose our interest in God and we focus on the pleasure, right? So the very easy way to see, this is, in Kabbalah, there's a lot of things between men and women. And in this generation, we really don't have to worry about being, excited by these conversations, because the world has become such a place with so much advertising and so much stuff out there that it's a conversation that we are adults enough that we can have the conversation. But if you were on a date with a woman and they brought out the most delicious steak, you would be more interested in making sure that you don't do anything funny when you're eating your steak than how you're being perceived by this person. So you'd enjoy the steak, but you'd make sure not to gobble it up in 2 seconds, right? Because you say, I want to eat the steak with this person so that we can enjoy this meal together, so that we can become closer. That's the whole game. It's very simple things that we're discussing, but it's not so simple to do. It's very simple to say, but it's not so simple to do, right? Okay, move on. We need to reach a state of turning to God, not in order to get things, but rather for spiritual transformation. In any event, a selfish connection with God can lead to a higher connection rooted in love. Therefore, prayer for material things are not to be belittled. Okay? I see a lot of these excerpts, there's like two parts to it, the beginning and the end. So let me read it again. We need to reach a state of turning to God not in order to get things, but rather for spiritual transformation. In any event, a selfish connection with God can lead to a higher connection rooted in love. Therefore, prayers for material things should not be belittled. Okay? I mean, if we just start to think about this for a second and think that, if we pray all the time for everything that we want, and how much time do we spend praying for all the things that we want, and here, what the Bal Ha Sulam is telling you is that really that's all just preparatory work for praying to be changed. The Rabbi Shalom, the son of the Bal Ha Sulam, famously said, really there's only one prayer, and that prayer is change me. That there's really nothing else to say to God. If you really truly understand that God is perfect, and God is eternal, and God is all-knowing, and doing everything for the good, then you wouldn't be asking for all the things that you want. You'd be focusing on, how can I become what you want me to become, so that I can be closer to you, right? So this is a very high level, but thankfully in the religious Jewish community, you meet people who are like this, people who are at least, first you start off by saying I need to make money, and then you say my children have to be healthy and happy, but usually most of us get to the point where we say, what's the point of this whole existence, and what do you want out of this, and how do I perceive you more? And so this is what we're striving for. And so at least to hear this, I mean, if you just read this every day, it would probably be transformative when you pray. We need to reach a state of turning to God not in order to get things, but rather for spiritual transformation. In any event, a selfish connection with God can lead to a higher connection rooted in love. Therefore, prayers for material things are not to be belittled. So we have something called from lo lishma to lishma, from not for God's sake to God's sake. And so the way that we're made and the way that we're constructed is that we can, if we just get a hold of the Torah and we have the right attitude, we can go from having our selfish desires, and we can actually give birth to more altruistic desires. And so it will work as long as a person has the awareness that that's what the Torah is supposed to do. We have a problem, and it's certainly something that's been in years past, is that people are never awakened to the fact that this is the purpose of the Torah, for us to be transformed into givers. And so they basically spend their entire life doing everything properly, and they wouldn't do anything wrong. They wouldn't break Shabbos, and they wouldn't eat something that's not kosher, and they wouldn't even speak bad about somebody. They do all these things, but there's no perception that the problem is that they need to be something other than what they are, and they just want to continue the way they are. That's the way God made us, inside of our egos, and we stay the way we are, and somehow God changes, or we rack up all of these points, and we end up in a place where we get all these things. We get all the things that we didn't get here, now we get it in another universe. We go somewhere, and we get that car that we didn't get, and that's the present for what we did. And this is really, really baby talk, and it becomes a real problem if a person doesn't behave properly. If you meet somebody who's acting the right way, but you still don't like them. You still feel that there's a selfishness, or that there's an arrogance, right? This becomes a real problem, because the person is misunderstanding the Torah, and so this is why we have, in this generation, we have Chassidut and we have Kabbalah that's being studied, so that people can really, understand. There's another point to be made. In past generations, people were not evolved enough. We made this point, but I'm going to make it even more clearly. In past generations, people did not have the potential to break free of the ego. So that's why the Baal HaTanya, this is going back 7 generations or more, 10 generations, I'm not sure how many generations already, to the first Chabad rabbi, the Alter Rebbe of Chabad. He wrote the Tanya, and he called the book the work of the Benoni, of the intermediate person. And this was because he says clearly that it's not everybody who has the potential to actually to be transformed. They're not, in that lifetime, they're never going to get to that place. And so it would be kind of cruel to tell a person that if you try, you can become, you can win the race in the Olympics. it's not true. If somebody doesn't have those, the ability to actually, to the potential to become an athlete, and because actually it's very not nice to tell the person that they're going to make it there. So that's why if a person has the right attitude, then they can approach the work of being in galut, of being in exile, of not changing, but behaving properly, knowing that they're working towards a place. And so the Alter Rebbe comes and he explains that joy that God sees from somebody who doesn't even have the potential to change, but he's still willing to behave properly and wait, because waiting is a very, very beautiful thing. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you wait for them, then that is a very, very high degree of love, right? You're not getting the payoff, but you're waiting. And so this is why we have two qualities. And so we're doing both of them at the same time. On the one hand, just by behaving and being away from God, not sensing God in a revealed way, but still behaving, is a very, very beautiful, high thing to do. But ultimately, we have to jump into the pool and we have to say, I want to be like you, I want to be with you, I want to understand you, I want to sense you. And so since we are in this generation and the problems are so overwhelming that are coming to humanity, it's more than an invitation. That is God telling us it's time to move. When the Jews came out of Egypt, when the Israelites came out of Egypt, when they came to the Egyptians were chasing them, the Egyptian army was chasing them, and they came to the water, and then you had four camps. Some people wanted to pray, some people wanted to return back to Egypt with the army, say, listen, we give up, let's take us back, we'll be slaves. Some people wanted to fight, right? And some people, I'm not sure what some people wanted to jump in and commit suicide and jump into the water. And so this is the way that nature, that God is revealed in nature, is that he shows us that there's an emergency, that we have no choice, but we have to go forward. God told Moses, go forward. It's time to go forward. And so this crisis, it's very interesting with the wars that we've had in Israel, is that every time they ask the generals to come up with a strategy, the generals come back and say there's no military solution for the problem we have. Because of the dynamics of the different countries, and we have populations, and they're having more children, and all these issues, they look at the situation, they say there's no real way out. And so this is, according to Kabbalah, a madrega, a level of consciousness. When you realize that you are in Egypt and you are in your ego, and that it's time that you have to get out and you can't get out on your own, that is a very high spiritual state. And that is the state that's being asked of us now, is that God is saying to us, you need to do the Torah in a revealed way. There's no other solution for what is happening here. And people still, they say, we can do this, we can kill it, we can kill the enemy, and then we can do this, we can set up a new way of doing things, and it's always everything but changing. And if you ever speak to a teenager, you'll find out very quickly that that's what you're up against. You're punishing them, and all you want is for them to change, even just if they just change the way they thought about what happened, you'd be thrilled, right? If your kid said, I'm upset with you because it was irresponsible that you told me you would come home at 11 and you didn't. If they just say, oh wow, I realized I realized why that was, you didn't enjoy that you were worried about me, whatever. If they said anything, you'd be like, forget about the punishment. You don't have to be punished. You get it. You understand, right? But we were so stubborn inside of our egos that we want the change to happen outside of us. I'm behaving properly. You change. I'm liberal, but the conservatives should change. I'm from the West. The Easterners should change. And so this is the problem that we have, is that we don't focus. The Rav Nachman says the life is a narrow bridge, and the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the writer, the author of the Zohar, said, it's like a bow and arrow. You have to aim at the target, and so you have all of these peripheral band-aids, problems, and solutions for the problem, but you have to aim only at the real problem, and the real problem is the ego and our selfishness and the fact that we're disconnected, and that's what we're working on. Okay.
What's an altruistic desire?
What's what?
What's an altruistic desire?
An altruistic desire is a desire to give something that's very important to you to somebody else. Simple as that.
Isn't that your desire too?
Is that my desire?
Not you, but a person.
A person? So there's 4 levels. You're asking a very beautiful, very important, and the correct question. So the Bal Ha Sulam comes and says that there's 4. Remember, this is the introductory articles. We haven't even been started to study the mechanics. So hold on, no, let me answer your question. The Bal Ha Sulam says that there's 4 levels of development. Receiving to receive, giving to receive, giving because you enjoy giving, and the highest one, the feminine aspect, is receiving because you want to make somebody else happy. So these are 4 levels of development. When a baby is born, they go like this. If you touch their hand, they close their hand right away because they are in reception. Because they're a baby and they're so cute and they're so dependent and they haven't done anything wrong yet, it's very easy to enjoy when a baby is taking, right? Because you enjoy the fact that they're taking from you. But if you had a teenager who said, "Give me the car keys," and grabbed some food off the table and like just left his refrigerator door open and ran out, it would not be so pleasant. So we graduate from each of these levels. And so to answer your question, which is a beautiful question, we exist in all 4 of these levels at the same time. The question is, do we remain in these levels? Where do we stay in these levels? And so the bottom level you receive, in order to receive, is the level of the material world and the level of halakha. Meaning, if I work, I get the paycheck. If I get married to you, you are not married to anybody else. This is the material plane of existence. That's how we have to exist. I am wearing my clothes. I don't go into your house and take your clothes because you have a nice red sweater. I don't just take. That's very sweet. But a person. I don't want your sweater. I'm just trying to draw. I thank you. I'm trying to just try to do my best to explain the Bal Ha Sulam. It says in the Talmud that, and I think you got the first point, that these are 4 levels that we all enjoy, but the question is how much of each of them, okay? And the hardest one is the feminine, is to be able to most people experience this only when they go to a party and they have the grandmother there. And the grandmother buys them socks every single year, right, Shlomo? The grandmother buys you socks every year, and every year you enjoy the socks. "Oh, grandma, thank you so much. These are the most beautiful socks I've ever seen." You have like a whole drawer full of them. So what happened is that you're enjoying the socks because you want to make your grandmother happy. And so if you really enjoy, the trick is to get somebody a present that they really enjoy so they can actually enjoy it and not pretend to enjoy it, right? And so that would be the highest thing, is when you enjoy, we all have this, you go to somebody's house, they make a meal and it actually tastes good and you actually enjoy it and you tell them, "Thank you so much, I really enjoyed the food you made," and there you go. So you received the food, it actually was good, and you're letting the person know and you're taking joy from the fact that the person is enjoying the fact that they gave you something. That's the relationship. That is a relationship. What we're doing is so basic that it's hard to explain because it's such an automatic thing that you should know. Why do you think people like dogs so much? Because they have a dog and the dog is happy to see them, and then they give them the food and the dog is happy that the dog is so happy that you gave him food. So you're enjoying the fact that watching the dog eat, right? You're enjoying the dog run because the dog is inside of nature. The Bal Ha Sulam explains that because God didn't want to give the dog free will and a sense of identity and an ability to earn his keep, the dog doesn't have any of the problems that we have. So the level of nature is corrected. It works perfectly. If you left all the animals together, they would come into perfect balance. No problem. It's only people. They kill each other, but they only kill enough of the animal let's say if there's lions and deers, the lions will only kill enough deer that they can repopulate.
No, they kill enough so they can satisfy themselves.
No, not the case. If you have an ecosystem, then all the animals will come into balance with each other, and each animal will eat only the right amount of the other animals. And if something goes wrong, it's usually because humans were involved and they messed up the water and they messed up the thing, and so the animals will the natural world will naturally come into balance with itself because the Bal Ha Sulam explains they don't have free will. They're not earning what they get, right? So they don't have any of these issues. Only the people have the issues because God's trying to give us even more than we have.
A dog is happy.
I think a person who has emotions can recognize those same emotions in someone else. So since I know what happiness is, if I see somebody happy, I know. That's my opinion. I'm not sure it's covered in Kabbalah, but I think that it's a human. There are people who are, I'm not sure, is it sociopaths, psychopaths, or narcissists, but one of those doesn't have that ability to tell when there's somebody, so they mimic the things, but they've never felt it themselves, so it's an actual problem. Okay, let's move on. Even if we say that God is good, suffering attests to feeling otherwise. Even if we say that God is good, suffering attests to feeling otherwise. This is every single one of these is gold, but here we go. This is a massive problem that we have. We're asked to be good. We're asked to behave. We're asked to pray to God and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What happens, unfortunately, is that at a certain point we could potentially lose sight of how we really feel. And so Rav Nachman came and talked about that he wants you to go to the woods and talk to God like he's your friend. Stop with all of these prayers that are in the order of Kabbalah. The whole davening is an order of Kabbalah. Each one of these prayers is another rung on this ladder, and they all go to this place, and you're praising God and telling him how great he is. Rav Nachman said, enough. Go to the woods and say, I'm so angry, I'm so confused, I'm so bitter, I'm so miserable, I'm so this, I'm so that, and I appreciate that my rent's paid, I really, really do, but it's not enough for me, and right? Or why am I here, and what's this stuff, right? And what about other people who are, right? So this is a real problem. They have also, who is it? The Kutzker Rebbe was known as the Emes Dika Rebbe, the truthful Rebbe. And so when he used to come in and he used to see people praying and going like this, he was like, please do me a favor, slow down, cool your jets, and he famously said that he came into to the synagogue and they were having a party, a kiddush, and somebody was eating fish. And so he said to the person, wow, you're really going at that fish. And so the guy said to him, yes, Rabbi, I love fish. And so the rabbi famously said, if you loved fish, it would be swimming in the ocean. You love yourself. You love the taste of fish, right? So here we're saying, even if we say that God is good, suffering attests to feeling otherwise. So I always, I'm not sure where I read it or if maybe it was in a Chabad website or something, but, God can handle it. God has seen God created all the emotions, and God is very, God knows how everything works. God made everything. And so if you are being honest, there's no reason to be disrespectful, but God can handle if you tell him honestly, I'm confused. I want to tell you, I saw this maybe 2 weeks ago. An astrophysicist, should I say his name? Tyson is his last name. I can't stand the guy. I really he's very pompous, and he literally said to, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of viewers, I don't believe in God because if God is good, God is either not good or not all-powerful. That's what he said. So he doesn't know that there's volumes of books that are written about what he's talking about. How he doesn't know that that's a question. He should, instead of saying, I don't believe in God because either God is not good, because look how much suffering there is, or God's not all-powerful because he can't do anything about the suffering, right? He didn't turn it into a question and say to God, if you are good, and you are all good, and you are all-powerful, what is this? And literally, what spills out of that question is everything that the Ari HaKodesh wrote. The Avram Avinu famously looked up at the world and figured out, he said to himself, if God is good and God is all-powerful, I'm going to try to figure out what's going on here. And he figured it out. He figured out that there's a whole thing, right? And so the Ari HaKodesh goes through the entire Simsim. He said, God is all-powerful and all good. So why are we here? He said, oh, I get it. It's free will, the opportunity to earn what we are what we're going to get, all the amazing things we're going to get, and an ability to transform ourselves from takers who are opposite God to being givers, so that we have equivalency of form, so that we are together with God. We have what's called devekut, adhesion with the Creator. So if you have somebody who you're exactly like, you are connected to them completely. So that is what God wants to give us a gift, and that's why we have the world that we have today, okay? And this has been all figured out by and written down in the Torah. The Bal Ha Sulam wrote in a letter that a tzaddik is a person who enjoys life nonstop every single moment. For a tzaddik, every situation is from God and is therefore good. The Bal Ha Sulam wrote in a letter that a tzaddik is a person who enjoys life nonstop every single moment. For a tzaddik, every situation is from God and is therefore good. Okay? Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have a great life. But we want to do it by having the best car, and we want to do it by being the most popular, and we want to do it by being rich and being successful and popular. We go through every single possible thing. But here, the Bal Ha Sulam is telling you that what makes somebody a tzaddik. We think of a tzaddik as a person who sits in shul all day and they mumble words and they mumble words and they mumble words, and then they sit in front of books and we say, well, who wants that? I want to go to the beach and I want to have a race car and I want to have all these good things in life. And, you know, at the very least, I want to do, like, follow all the rules and get heaven and get everything in heaven, right? That's a motivation that a lot of people have. But very few people say to themselves, if I do the Torah and I become a tzaddik, I will be happy non-stop every single moment. So how could that possibly be? And so if you went, we have two people, okay, and I go on the exact same hike. So one person goes on the hike, and when he gets to the end of the hike, he finds out that at the end of the hike, there's a big barbecue and there's a big party, and he's at the most amazing resort hotel that he's ever been at, and it's everything, the most fantastic stuff that's ever been is all happening at the end of this hike, okay? And you have another person who's been to the hotel already. He's been to the hotel already, and he knows at the end of the hike it's going to be swimming and barbecues and everything is going to be the most amazing weekend of his life. So we go on the hike. One guy is complaining the entire time. What is this stupid hike and where are we going? And the guy who's leading us is a jerk, and there's not enough food and there's not enough water, and they're making us walk too much, and I want to go back to the city. And and so there's two different people. The only difference is that one person sees the end. It says in the Talmud that the person who is wise, the person who sees the future. And so if a person would just awaken to the fact that we are moving towards this very, very perfected place, and that everything is guaranteed. You have to say that again. Everybody's happiness and everything that's going to happen already happened above time and space. And so that is where we started, and that's where we're going to go back to. And there's a rule in spirituality. We're jumping way into deep Kabbalah, but as the worlds cascade down, they don't disappear. Everything that happens stays. It's like now that we have computers and we have, we have hard drives, we can appreciate this, that everything that happened continues to stay in its form and as a copy. So the state that we left is still there. It's not that it's missing. The state of perfection and unity and love and balance is in existence. It's just outside of our consciousness. And so what we're waiting for is for it to be revealed in our consciousness. In some religions, I'm not an expert, but I did do a little bit of reading. And so in Buddhism, they reveal that desire is the source of suffering. That when you desire something, you don't get it, that's what causes pain. And so what they actually do is they actually try to get to a state which is possible where you no longer desire anything. And so people ask, why can't I be a Buddhist and a Jew? This is a complete distortion of what Judaism is trying to accomplish. And so people think Judaism, I don't want to be religious because I want to have a good time. And so the fact is that we're trying to have a real good time, the fulfillment of the best time we could possibly have for everybody. And so we always have a paradox. So if you're in a relationship, you have the receiving part of the relationship and the giving part of the relationship. But ultimately, we want to be in balance, and so that we feel the relationship and the love and the unity, and we're not concerned whether or not you just gave me something or I just gave you something. What we're much more concerned about is the meeting place between the two of us and how we are trying to stay in perfect balance with each other. And so if you look at the infinity sign, it's like a number 8 on its side. And so if you look at it, it's actually one giving and then receiving. Giving and receiving. That's not by accident. That's literally the quintessential relationship of existence, which is our relationship with God and everybody else. And it's all, when it's in balance, you have that flash. You have the center of this place where, so you have a heart, your heart beats, but it's also resting. It beats and it rests. It beats the only organ in the body that never rests completely. It's always on, but it rests in between. And so how could God be in perfect rest? And so we have a desire to be at rest, but we also have a desire for movement, both of those things. So you see in the infinity sign, it's a perpetual giving and receiving, but there is a center point that's perfectly in balance, right? And so that place, what we're saying here is that we want both of those things. We want everything. And so everything means being a giver and being a receiver, having all of the reception and all of the giving. And having and above that we have the relationship. So that's the problem, is that people are usually concerned with giving and they're concerned with taking, but they're not concerned with the balance between the two and the relationship that you're trying to foster. And so a lot of these systems in spirituality spend a lot of time, or all their time, on all of these forces. And so they're not wrong. In a lot of these systems, they are identifying different angels and gods. That these are old-fashioned words, but they are identifying love and hate. They're identifying giving and receiving. They're identifying honor and disrespect. They're identifying all these things just like we're doing in Kabbalah, just like in Torah. The problem is that they've lost sight of the relationship. And the point of the relationship is that you want to be close to, meaning you want to be similar to the one you're having a relationship to. If your partner is very nice, you also want to be very nice, right? And so this is the problem with the other religions, is that they don't look high enough up the ladder. They don't look all the way up to the relationship with God and how to build a relationship with everybody else in order to reveal God. And then I just want to say this, because I think this is one of the most important points. And it's not my point, as many rabbis have made it before, that the word God is very problematic. It's a very funny thing to say, because we're learning Torah, but the word God is very problematic, because when I say God, it's the same thing like I say to you an angel, and you start thinking about all these things. And so there's a famous rabbi, I'm trying to remember what his name was, but he said, famously said, an atheist told him that it's stupid to believe in God, and he said, back to this atheist, he said, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. And in other words, you need a lot of learning to understand what we're talking about God, because God is hidden from us. And so what we have a real problem, because even I'm sitting here, and I'm teaching this stuff, and every time I say the word God, I get a little embarrassed. I go, oh no, my friends who knew me from New York, and I was like, they're going to hear me talking about God all day, and they're going to be like, you know what happened to Judah? He went off and became like this crazy religious fanatic, and there he is, and he's like just God, this, God. So it's a very big problem. And so we have to start from, the Kabbalah is the study of God. And so if you want to take a shortcut and know what we're talking about, you need to imagine what everything good is and everything that you want is, and even more than that, and imagine for yourself wanting even more than you want, and taking all of that and then imagining you having that and everybody else having that, and being in a place where, like your best day where you were walking in the woods and everything felt magical. It's called scintillating, that you walk through the woods and the leaves were scintillating with the light was dancing off of the trees, and you just felt in harmony with everything and balance, and you felt in love with everybody, and you felt good about yourself, and you felt good about everybody else. That is what we're talking about. And so when you start to think about God is the person who's the person, he's not a person, God is the force that is not the entity, that is not letting me eat lobster. And God is the one I keep asking him that I should be able to buy a new car, and he doesn't let me buy a new car. Or God is the person, God is the entity who causes people to fight, and there's wars throughout the world, and you have the French and the English, and they fought each other over God, and they said that God's, you have your name for God, and I have my name for God, and now we're going to kill each other. And so this is the problem with the word God. And so we have to do a lot of work and a lot of study to try to understand what we're talking about here. Okay, moving on. here's something for you. Emunah, which means faith, and giving are the same thing. Emunah, faith, and giving are the same thing. What? What are you talking about? I mean, that doesn't make you say, well, no, there's two different words, they have different meaning, and now you're telling me that they're giving are the same thing. So, when it comes down to it, when we really, really get down to it, brass tacks of what we need, and what we want, and we give that away to somebody, that is because we have faith that we're going to get something higher in return. So if I have a sandwich and I'm really hungry, the only reason I'm going to give you half the sandwich is because I have some feeling that there's some purpose to me giving you what I need. And so that is what a person cannot do that without faith. If a person is just a calculating monster, they are not going to give anybody anything unless they can figure out how it's going to benefit themselves. And guess what? That's how we are all created. Even if we've lost sight of that, we are incapable, the Bal Ha Sulam says, without having this gifted to us from above, and listen, you've been doing Torah and mitzvahs, I don't know how many years, but you might have abilities that other people don't have, and you just assume that everybody else has them. So you've been doing Torah and mitzvahs for I don't know how many years, but it's possible that you have an ability in your heart to give selflessly, and the issue is that you think everybody else does. That might be a problem. This is that they say about liberals in America is that they assume everybody's going to be as nice as them. And so they assume that that they wouldn't chop anybody's head off, and so they assume that nobody else is going to chop anybody's head off. And then people say, no, we are going to chop people's heads off. We are going to invade their country and chop your head off. And they say, no, they don't mean that. It's a metaphor. They just mean they're angry. It's just because they've been brutalized, and that's what they mean. And so, no, they really, really mean that's what they intend to do, and that's what they're going to do. So we have to understand that in the old days, you went out back 1,200 years ago, it was a mitzvah, it was a religion, it was a thing that they're going to get on their horses, and they're going to go into a village, and they're going to kill all the men, and they're going to take all the sheep, and take all the women, and that's what they're going to do, and they're going to pray about it, and they're going to pray to their God, and they're going to do a whole and we were like, no, yeah, that's what we're saying. So, it's possible, what? So now you're asking a very, very good question, okay? So this is a question that befuddles Sam Harris, who is a brain, he's a brain scientist. What kind of scientist he is? I can't remember the name, but he's a big, big scientist. And he is befuddled by some of these things. He reads the Bible, and he doesn't understand how could it be that God could tell people to take slaves in the Bible. So there are many books about this topic, and it's a very complicated, a very good question, and it's very, very hard to answer. But here, we're learning Kabbalah. So the Bal Ha Sulam explains that the entire Torah is an internal landscape. And so let's leave apart the fact that we know that there's also a manifestation on the material plane. But the slaves that we're taking are ourselves. If I cannot control myself and I must eat a piece of chocolate cake by myself, watching videos at 11 o'clock at night, I am a slave to chocolate cake. And if I take a slave and I say, no, you are going to get up and you're going to go to this Torah class every single day at 10 o'clock. I now have a slave who is now a slave to going to the class. If I say I am not going to eat non-kosher food, I have made myself a slave. And so if you think that Esav and Yaakov are just people from history who were supposed to learn metaphorically as what they are, the Bal Ha Sulam comes and says that's not what the story is. So Sam Harris reads the Bible, and he's, I believe, Jewish. He reads the Bible in a way that we said 2,000 years ago, please don't read the Bible that way. Please don't become a literalist and see that, God said go in. Now, did they, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, did they go into a land and conquer and kill all the people? They probably did. And so now we're opening up the conversation to a much bigger conversation, but there's a 6,000 year evolution of consciousness. And so this other guy on the news who I also hate. I can't remember. I can't remember the name of the news station, but he's really very anti-Semitic. Anyway, he made the point that
I have a problem with hatred.
I have a problem with hatred. No, you're supposed to actually hate things that are terrible. You
No,
are.
but it's only this person's view. Why should you hate it?
Well, because his view is that he wants to kill Jewish people and
That's his view.
okay, you can hate, but okay, I hear you. Listen, so this guy was making the point that you can no longer fight a war today the way you could fight a war in World War II, because somebody said, somebody was defending Israel and they said, well, didn't they bomb Dresden? And didn't they kill more of the Germans than they did the British? Does that mean the British are wrong because they killed more of the Germans? So he made a very logical question. And this guy, who I don't like and I don't think he's particularly smart, made an amazing smart point. He said, hold on, it wasn't Ben Shapiro. No, Ben Shapiro, I love. No, this is...
He made that point.
So he made that point, correct. And this guy, who I don't like and I don't think he's particularly bright, made a very, very brilliant point. He said, you couldn't do what you did in 1943, you couldn't do it today because you have the media and you have the videos and so Baruch Hashem, he is right that he's saying that we're evolving to a place where you're no longer able to, but what the point he didn't make is that what do you do if you have an enemy who is still living in barbaric times where they are willing to chop off people's heads and do these things. And so you have a circular argument at some point, but you are making a very good point that we should not behave if in the Bible they came into a land and they didn't have economies, they didn't have drugstores and candy stores, they had like farms and sheep and stuff. And so I don't know what they did back then, but if it says in the Torah that they came in there and they took over, we shouldn't do that anymore. Let's not behave that way.
Do they have a commandment to kill Amalek?
So the question is, what do you mean by that? So the Bal Ha Sulam comes. The Bal Ha Sulam comes and says that the Amalek is an internal force, and it manifests. We're going down a rabbit hole here that's very complicated, but I know you're up to it. But this is what we learn in Kabbalah, that we have to spend time learning this. But that what we're seeing outside is a manifestation of our collective internal worlds. In other words, when we see stealing, that is a desire, a willingness, an ability to steal that is in every single one of us. Maybe you have it only 1%, maybe I have it 5%, maybe somebody has it 30%. No one's judging me else. But, so what I'm saying to you is that these are internal evaluations that only you can do. And so it says in the Gemara, and I think we can end here, it says in the Talmud, I think I told you this before, that the reward for lifting 5 pounds is 10 pounds. So the Bal Ha Sulam comes and says, what does that mean? It means that if we look inside of ourselves and we find something that's not fully fixed, and we acknowledge that, and we say, wow, I could be selfish, then the reward for that is that God will then reveal for you even more things that are wrong with you, but you have to earn it. And so the Bal Ha Sulam used to say that when he finds something bad inside of himself, he would celebrate. He would say, wow, I have another tikkun, another thing that I can fix, that God gave me an opportunity to get closer to him by becoming more and more like him, by fixing something that's wrong with me. Now, you have 2 choices. Either you're a perfect person, which is very possible, or you have something to do. So if you're a perfect person, if you're righteous and you're a tzaddik and you're already in that level, then go and become a light unto everybody else, an overflowing cup, like the Baba Sali. Go and go all day and help and make people happy. And I know you are a beautiful person. So maybe that is why that's why you're on the earth. Maybe you're one of the righteous and that's what you're here for. Or maybe you're like the rest of us, and we have to do this internal work of constantly looking at ourselves and saying, what part of this mess that I am seeing could I possibly fix? Is there anything in the world is there any part of this disaster that we see in front of our eyes every day? Is there any part of that I could change by changing something inside of me? And that is the study of Kabbalah, and that is what we're learning here. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. Be happy, be safe. See you next time.